Hello and welcome to Food Safety Fridays. My name is Simon Timperley from the International Food Safety and Quality Network. It's good to be back. First webinar since December, so we're in a new year. Happy New Year, belated. But it's good to be back, and we've announced a full program of Food Safety Fridays for this year on the website. So what better way to start 2022 and a new webinar program with our very special friend, Vladimir Stuchinsky. And today we're going to be talking about HACCP, the changes in HACCP 2020 Codex. So welcome, Vladimir. How are you?
Oh, thank you very much, Simon, for inviting me in this first Food Safety Friday in 2022. Well, I'm feeling great after, a few weeks with COVID. I'm feeling great now. I had time to prepare for HCCP 2020. Yeah.
Good. And
Yeah.
we've got 2,331 people registered today, which is incredible.
Yes.
So it shows you how popular you are and how much they've missed Food Safety Fridays. So welcome everybody. Type in the chat, say hello, tell us where you're joining from. We'll play the sponsor ads and then we'll be back for the presentation. Okay. Okay, thanks to the sponsor, Food Safety Fridays. The chat is just going so fast, but
Yes.
Fernando from Mexico, Elaine Wu from Missouri, USA, April Susi from Indonesia, Beko from, Vasidi from Turkey, Bridget from Ohio. Everybody's
Yeah.
welcome, and especially Ismail Mugeri from Uganda. Wow, it's
Yeah.
brilliant.
And I saw people from Russia, from Iran, from Mongolia. So welcome all of you. Welcome.
We're bringing the world together via food safety. So, okay, let's get your slides on, Vlad.
Yeah, let's set up the slides and yeah, let's start. So once again, hello to everyone. I see that you are using your chat box on the right side, and please type in if you have any questions during the presentation. I hope that we will be able to read it because all the chat is going very fast, and yeah, every time when we have a lots of attendees, it just went crazy. But in case that we do not answer all of your questions. Of course, later Simon can take these questions and put it in the forum on the IFSQN site. And of course, on this forum, we will gladly answer all of your questions that are there. So today, very interesting topic, and Simon and I agreed that we start with the important changes in HCCP 2020. Of course, we're not going to talk about all the small things, only we're going to talk about the most important changes, just some overview for you to understand what is there, what is new in the document, and what you should take care on regarding your company, your production, or of course, if you are doing the consultation, just to understand what is there to talk about and read more deeply in the document. So probably you already know me because I have been doing the presentations or the Food Safety Fridays and also some additional trainings for IFSQN from 2015. But I started in 2010 working for Ahold Delhaize company as a quality associate. Actually, I was responsible for the implementation of ISO 9001 and HCCP at that time, together, of course, with quality department colleagues in more than 360 stores, 5 distributive centers, 4 centralized production, etc. And I had really great experience here with more than 500 food safety audits, 1,000 employees trained, development of food safety store auditing application tool, and I worked actually for 3 countries. So that was a lots of work. In 2014, I was headhunted for Quality Austria, which is a certification body. And Quality Austria as certification body is working all over the world with their partners and also with their offices. And for Quality Austria, I'm there as the manager for the certification of food standards, but also I'm doing as an auditor and trainer. And as an auditor, I'm auditing all kinds of standards, but more focused on the food safety standards like FSSC 22000, HCCP, ISO 22000, and some specific certifications like RSPO, vegan label, etc., etc. As I told you, from 2015, I started working with Simon and IFSQN. We brought a lots of interesting presentations, and I wanted to share this knowledge additionally. So I have opened from 2019 additional vlog site, and this is called Addicted to Food. So you can find it on addictedtofood.me. This is a vlog website. You have lots of different videos from food safety. You can find me also on LinkedIn, also on YouTube if you type in my name, and I think that you will find some additional useful information for you on different languages. Of course, there is. So, first of all, before we continue, have you checked the new Codex document, General Principles of Food Hygiene Edition 2020? Please type in the chat box yes or no. Have you downloaded? Have you checked it? What is there? What is new? Just type in the chat yes or no. Simon, can you hear me?
Yeah, it looks a mixed reaction to me. I'd say 60-40 no. The majority, I would say no.
It's coming. I had a little bit late the
Oh,
chats. Oh, okay. Yes, not yet. No. Okay, it's mixed.
I'd say about
You're right.
70% no, 30% yes.
70%. Yes, I think it's like that. Okay, perfect. Because this would be then great input for you on what to pay attention when you start reading it. So let's continue and just start with some general things. Yeah. So if we look at the Codex, Alimentarius, if we talk about what it is, then we should mention that it is an international governmental organization founded in 1963, and it covers 188 member countries, which is really interesting, of course, and one member organization. This is European Union. It is financed by agricultural organization and health organization. So if you look at the Codex Alimentarius, of course, I always mention, please go. There is a draft version now made from World Health Organization that is talking about, food safety. Food safety future actually till 2030, and there of course they are mentioning what important changes will happen in standards, in legislation, also what countries should do and the governments, etc. So actually the codex is developing different codex standards that is covering commodity standards, some guidelines, codes of practice, and of course some MRLs for pesticides, residue, etc. And the main objective of this organization is actually to provide internationally adopted food standards presented in a uniform manner, with the objective to protect consumer health, which is on the first place, and of course to facilitate trade by removing barriers. What this would mean? It would mean that if in one country you implement HCCP and also the requirements that are coming with it, I mean, if you implement, of course, the Codex guidelines and the requirements that is coming with it, it should be accepted in other countries, and then it gives this, it removes the barriers and you can trade your food products, of course. Of course, this is more empowered by some standards recognized by GFSI, Global Food Safety Initiative. So what is the change? So the general principles of food hygiene originally adopted during the sixth session of the Codex Alimentarius Commission. This was in 1969, and it provides a basis for a food hygiene and the foundation for HCCP implementation. And in the previous 50 and plus years of its existence, the document had many revisions, with a particular emphasis for 1997 revision, where the hazard analysis and critical control point system and guidelines for its application annex was incorporated. So before the 1997, there were just general hygienic principles, general food hygiene basics. And in 97, the HCCP was added as an annex. So in the latest revision that was finished actually in 2020, the HCCP section is no longer an annex. It's not an annex to the real document, and it becomes chapter 2 of the document. Why this simple change is very important? It is important because we should understand that now whole document has two parts. First, that is talking about some general principles, and the second that is actually HCCP, which means that it gives one complete document important for all the companies working in the food chain, in the production, distribution, and storage, etc. So how this changes and how the new structure looks like. So there are general principles of food hygiene. Last edition is 2020, and this is the edition that is active at the moment. Some changes are there regarding the good hygiene practices and the hazard analysis. Of course, general principles are changed. You see these red letters. These are the changes in the overall document, and we will go through these changes. In the first part, there are changes like management commitment to food safety. Again, there are changes regarding some of the definitions in the standard, some changes in the section 7 regarding the control of operation, where more focus is given on a physical contamination, chemical, allergen management. And of course, in the chapter 2, some details are given again about validation, verification, and we will, of course, talk about it on our next slides. So, for you to remember major changes in Codex HACCP 2020, I will call it on next slide HACCP 2020. There is a new requirement for a food safety culture. We will talk about it. There are new and revised definitions, enhanced training requirements, enhanced good hygiene system requirements, enhanced good hygiene practice requirements in control of operations. There is a new allergen awareness management and controls, a new requirement for product traceability, enhanced consumer education requirements, and of course, changes in HACCP principles and a new requirement for validation of the HACCP plan. We will go through all of this in short, and the first thing for me very important to mention is the management commitment to food safety, which means food safety culture. So this is in first chapter in the general principles. The first thing that you will write in the document is the management commitment to food safety. Why this is important? So it is important because if you look at all other standards, especially the certification schemes of the GFSI developed in the previous 2 or 3 years, all of them, like BRC, like IFS, FSSC, implemented in their requirements the obligation for the food producers to present or to analyze their food safety culture in the company. So HACCP just followed that and entered in their own document the food safety culture. And in this chapter, management commitment to food safety, very important is said there that management has the responsibility to establish and maintenance a positive food safety culture. So responsibility is on the management. And all other standard, but also now HACCP wants to empower this, that in front of any inspection, in front of any auditors, in front of any third parties responsible for the food safety culture overall in the company is the management. So some of the elements that are important in cultivating a positive food safety culture are described there, like commitment of the management and all personnel to the production and handling of safe food. Also leadership, awareness of the importance of food hygiene by all personnel in the food business. Again, mentioning open and clear communication among all personnel in the food businesses, including communication of deviations and expectations. In the document, it is given how management can implement that, or management should ensure the effectiveness of the food hygiene system that are in place by several things. They can do it by ensuring the roles, responsibilities, and authorities, and that these are clearly communicated in the food business. They should do it by maintaining the integrity of the food hygiene system. They should do the verifying that controls are carried out and working and that the documentation is up to date. They should ensure that the appropriate training and supervision are in place, ensure compliance with relevant regulatory requirements, and of course, they should encourage continual improvement. So for all of you that are already handling with some certification schemes that are stricter or more detailed than HACCP, when we talk about FSSC, IFS, BRC, etc., you already had this part and you already should start the implementation of your food safety culture, of course. So what is next? The next are the new and revised definitions. So in the new general principles, there are significant improvements on the language used and terminology in general, and particularly when it comes to definitions. So there are 10 new definitions, 13 modified or updated definitions, and 3 definitions that are deleted ones. Why is this done? Because in the previous years, it was concluded that the way how document was written, it was not fully understood by the users. So Codex had to make some changes in the document in the HACCP 2020 and adjust the terminology in general and make it easier for the user to use it and to understand it. This is why there are 10 new definitions, there are 13 modified definitions, and these changes vary from a minor to fundamental definitions. So some of them, for example, there are new definitions like acceptable level. Of course, this means a level of hazard in a food at or below which the food is considered to be safe according to its intended use. So this is definition very important when you are doing your hazard analysis, to understand what hazards are there, but also to see, are these hazards on acceptable level, to really make sure that the food is according to its intended use. Again, what is a new definition? New definition is allergen cross-contact. Why? Because allergen is totally new thing in the HACCP 2020. In previous versions we mention it, but actually this detail about allergen control, about allergen management, it was not covered. Now it is covered, and of course when it's covered you need to define it. So allergen cross-contact this time is defined as the unintentional incorporation of an allergenic food or ingredient into another food that is not intended to contain that allergenic food or ingredient. As you see, it is very simple definition, very easy to remember, So I think that now Codex just removed all of that theoretical definitions where you have to think what is written there, and you needed to understand every word, and they become much more practical from the experience collected in the food production. Now, when I look at these definitions, they are much more practical and understandable for all of us that are in the food safety systems. One new thing that is defined there, and for me very important for the future conversation when we talk about HACCP 2020, is the abbreviation FBO, which means Food Business Operator. And under Food Business Operator, it is defined the entity responsible for operating a businesses at any step in the food chain. So no matter if you are a producer, primary producer, if you are a packer, if you are, just doing the storage, or you are doing the transportation, you are the FBO. You are the entity responsible for operating a business at any step in the food chain. You are the FBO. This means Food Business Operator. So in the future, all of us that are connected and doing something will be called FBO. And this is why during the whole document reading, you will see mentioning of the FBO, 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 yeah? Again, what is defined there is the food hygiene system. So this is prerequisite programs supplemented with control measures at CCPs as appropriate, that when taken as a whole ensures that food is safe and suitable for its intended use. So this is a food hygiene system. Of course, some additional changes are made, and these are that validation has been changed to a new definition. So we have now validation of controls measures, and the definition of verification has been changed from the application of method, procedures, tests, and other evaluations in addition to monitoring. So when we look at the definitions, what is said there? Validation of control measures. They're saying this is obtaining evidence that the control measure or combination of control measures, if properly implemented, is capable of controlling the hazard to a specified outcome. Very simple. It shows that validation you do before any monitoring, before any starting, etc. You do the validation. This is clear validation of your control measures. Then you have the verification, which is the application of methods, procedures, tests, or other evaluations in addition to monitoring to determine whether a control measure is or has been operating as intended. So it clearly shows that verification comes after. So you do the validation, then for your setup control measures, then you are doing your monitoring, which is doing it right now. And after monitoring, after you do the tracking with your methods, with your procedure, with your test, you do the verification of the whole thing. So now these two, in past, we always had problems with understanding what is the validation, what is the verification. Now the validation is not called just validation, it is called validation of control measures, so it is much clearer what you should do. Okay, so one of the next big changes is the training requirements. Of course, we had some training requirements in the previous version, but now under section 4, it is training and competence. And very important is that not just that it is mentioned that you should perform the training, but now there is a guidance which type of trainings you should perform in your organization. So when you are making the training programs, in your training programs, you need to take the elements into account that are covering the nature of hazards associated with the food. You need to take into account all, not just potential existence of physical, chemical hazard, but also known allergens. You should take into account, or you should take into account making your training program the likelihood of contaminations, conditions under which the food will be stored, expected length of time before consumption of the food, use and maintenance of instruments and equipment associated with the food. So in this case, HACCP 2020 clearly defined that your training program should also consider. Why I'm empowering this should, because it means must. Should mean, let's make it must. It's a must. Training programs should also consider principles of food hygiene. So in your training program, you need to have the topic with the principles of food hygiene. Then you should have the topic like prevent contaminants in food, how you should prevent contaminants in food. So this is second topic. Then additional topic in your training program would be personal hygiene, which includes proper hand washing and wearing when needed appropriate clothing. Then another topic, good hygiene practices, should be included in your training program. And then actions to take when food hygiene problems are observed. So these are the 5 topics that is a must in your training programs. So if you are making today your training program for the 2022 and you have HACCP, consider in your training program these 5 things. If you want to find it in the Codex document, these are the general principles. Under point 4.2, these are the training requirements, training programs, or training requirements. Okay, so these are the enhanced training requirements, and it is very clear, yeah, what you should do. Big changes did not happen in part 5, in part 6, that covers personal hygiene. This is part 6. Part 5 is also regarding the maintenance, cleaning, disinfection, pest control. It remained almost the same as in previous version, but version 7, this is control of operation, had some changes. So one of the changes is again connected with the verification. This is 7.1.5, saying that FBO should undertake verification activities as relevant to the business. And in these verification activities, FBO should check that good hygienic practices procedure have been implemented effectively, that monitoring is occurring where planned, and that appropriate corrective actions are taken where requirements are not met. So examples of verification activities could include the following. Now, HACCP added also the examples. That's why I said at the beginning that they really tried to write this document in a way that you understand what you should do. You know, all the previous versions and a lots of certification schemes, they are just giving the requirements, but nobody is saying how you should do it, you know. And this time HACCP 2020 really shows it. So regarding the verification activities, you should do some review of good hygienic procedures monitoring. You should do some review when changes occur to the product process. You should do the assessment of the efficiency of cleaning, etc. So this is all under this part of verification. Another very interesting changes are under 725, 726, and 727. Why we had these parts? Actually, we had 725 and 726, like physical and chemical contamination in previous version. But more interesting is how now HACCP 2020 defined physical contamination, saying that you should have system in place through the food chain to prevent contamination of food by extraneous materials such as, and now actually defined what could be the groups of physical contamination that you should take care on, like personal belongings, jewelry, glass, metal shards, bones, plastic, wood fragments that could cause injury or present a choking hazard. Also, in manufacturing processing, some suitable preventive strategies such as maintenance and regular inspection of equipment should be undertaken. And now HACCP 2020 is mentioning also the monitoring equipment, like detection of screening devices which are appropriately calibrated should be used where necessary, like metal detectors, X-ray detectors, etc. So procedures again should be in place for personnel to follow in the case of breakages, like breakage of glass or plastic containers. So as you can see, 725 physical contamination in previous version was said you should uh, analyze potential hazards from the coming from the physical contamination, and it was left up to you to evaluate which physical hazards are there potentially happening in your surrounding in the product, and you should analyze it. But now actually in the document it is really clearly said which type of physical contamination is there, that if you need, you should have some type of equipment that is calibrated for the detection, like metal detectors or X-ray, and you should have some procedure for the prevention and some procedure in case that some breakages happen, you know. So it is very clearly mentioned there. Again, when we talk about chemical contamination 726, it is widened and clearly explained. But for me, important is that they added like chemical residues from pesticides. They added some cleaning materials, non-food grade lubricants. They also added potential chemicals coming from veterinary drugs, such as antibiotics. Also, what is important is that now HACCP 2020 is mentioning chemical contamination that could come from the that could contaminate your food coming from the food contact surfaces and food packaging materials. So in previous version there were no mentioning of this, but now this is very clear, which means that you need to evaluate it. And again, completely new, there is the allergen management. Allergen management is under 727, and it says hygienic nature of some foods as appropriate to the food businesses. Of course, inside of this, the HACCP 2020 is saying what you should implement, which type of allergens are there, how you should check these, how you should check the cross contact, etc. Because this is very big part, and of course this is explained in HACCP 2020 just under one chapter. They are saying that you should go and see the code of practice on food allergen management for food business operators. So this is additional document. This is additional document from 2020 that is covering just allergen management. So in order to use HACCP 2020, you should check also this document for the code of practice on food allergen management for food business operators. Yes. Okay. So these are, let's say, the main changes for this part of the control of operation. And something that is added a little bit more for understanding, again in the chapter 8, this is product information and consumer awareness. Of course, this is to mention the lot identification and the traceability. Lot identification or other identification strategies are essential in product recall and also help effective stock rotation. Of course, you understand this, especially if you have some stricter standards, then already there you have the requirements saying that you should take care about your lot identification. Here, very important is that each container of food should be permanently marked to identify the producer and the lot. There are again some rules that you can go to and check it, and these are the general standard for the labeling of pre-packed foods that is applied here. Of course, traceability product tracing system should be designed and implemented according to the principles of traceability or product tracing. And as a tool within a food inspection and certification system, you can use again the documents that are there for Codex Alimentarius. You see here CXG 60 from 2006. So again, HACCP 2020 is giving you the how you can do it. Of course, if you have any better systems, yes, use it. But if you don't know how, here it is, here are the documents, you read it and you can implement it by yourself. For me, very interesting was the addition in chapter 8 under product information and consumer awareness, the part that is talking about consumer education. So let's just think what is a consumer education. We have product information. So product information would be all the informations that are there on the product. And this information is for the consumer, how to handle, how to prepare, how to display, store, and use products safely and correctly. So these are the product information. Then we have product labeling, which means that you should label your product according to the, of course, product, but also the legislation of the country that you are working with or shipping your product. And then we have separate part which is talking about consumer education. So what is a consumer education? This guidance has so programs should enable consumers to understand the importance of any product label information and following any instruction accompanying products and to make informed choices. So in particular, consumers should be informed of the relationship between time temperature control, cross-contamination and foodborne illnesses, and some presence of allergens. Also some so consumers should also be informed of the 5 keys to safer food and educate to apply appropriate food hygiene measures like proper hand washing, adequate storage, cooking, and avoiding cross-contamination to ensure that their food is safe and suitable for consumption. But let's see, how would you do it? How you would perform the consumer education? It could be put it on the product labeling. like short pictograms showing washing hands, like you just set a pictogram of washing hands and you said at least 25 seconds or 40 seconds or whatever, so it could be like consumer education. But also you can do the consumer education not just on the product but also on your website, on the through some marketing activities, etc. So it was very interesting to see that HACCP now really enhanced this consumer education. It's not just product labeling, it's not just product information, but also education how to consume your food safely. So this could be also an information on not just the storage or defrosting, but it could be that do not cut this product, which is meat, together with some other products, on the same board. You don't put that on the product information or the labeling, but it could be some consumer education that you do on, I don't know, maybe on some platforms like YouTube or etc. And it would be very interesting to see. And yeah, these are the changes for chapter 1. And with this, we came to the chapter 2. Chapter 2 is now actually the HACCP. In previous version, the HACCP was the annex, and now HACCP is actually the chapter 2. So the whole document, that's why I call it HACCP 2020. If we look at this chapter 2, and if we look at the principles of the HACCP system, we could see that there are no big changes. We still have 7 principles there. We still have in overall looking the 12 steps, and yeah, this is it. So let's look in the red color here what is actually changed detailing. Yeah. So main change is there is an addition guidance for validation of the HACCP plan. So this validation of the HACCP plan means that before the HACCP plan can be implemented, its validation is needed. If we look at the previous version, when we did the validation, in the first chapter, when we talked about it, we said the definition is the validation of control measures. Yes? Validation of control measures. So if we implement something, then we do first the validation, then we are continuing with the monitoring and controls, and at the end we are doing the verification. But now there is addition in guidance saying the validation of the HACCP plan. So what this means? It means that before, when you develop the HACCP plan, you need to validate it. And this consists of making sure that the several elements together are capable of ensuring control of the significant hazard relevant to the food business, identifying the hazards, critical control points, critical limits, control measures, frequency and type of monitoring of CCPs, corrective action, frequency and type of verification, and the type of information to be recorded. Validation of control measures and their critical limits is performed during the development of the HACCP plan. Validation could include a review of scientific literature using some mathematical models, conducting validation studies, and or using guidance developed by authoritative sources. So you should do validation of your HACCP plan. Of course, you should do the validation of each control measure. And when you finish the validation of each control measure, you implement your HACCP plan, you should do validation of the whole HACCP plan. And this means validation of everything that is there in the plan, the hazard analysis, the flow diagrams, etc. And if you need some help on how to perform the validation, then again there is a guideline of the validation of food safety control measures from 2008. Again, as part of the Codex Alimentarius documents. If you go on the site of Codex Alimentarius, of course, you will find it. Again, this is principle 3, establishing validated critical limits. Okay, so again, we have in principle 5, establishing the corrective actions to be taken when monitoring indicates a deviation from a critical limit at a CCP has occurred. This is just, let's say, wording change, nothing significant regarding this. And again, in principle 6, validate the HACCP plan and then establish procedure for verification to confirm that the HACCP system is working as intended. So if you look at your, let's say, working in your company, and this is the first time you are implementing one production line, first of all, you will start with the, of course, all the steps of the development for the HACCP. And when you come to the principles, then you will go through these 7 principles. This means that you will evaluate your flow diagrams on site, that you will perform the hazard analysis for each step. Then you will, of course, determine the critical control points, establish some validated critical limits. For these validated critical limits, you will do the testing by yourself with the engagement of external laboratory, or you will do the validated critical limits from some literature, for example, where you can find the details about using some scientific literature or using some mathematical models, etc. Then you are going to establish a system to monitor control of CCPs. You will establish the corrective actions, and then you will validate your HACCP plan. Is it working? So you will give some time to start the production line, to start the production, and you will give some time to work, to monitor, to record, and then in principle 6 you will of course validate your HACCP plan. So you will need some time to validate your whole HACCP plan, and then of course you have principle 7, which is actually establishing documentation concerning all procedures and records appropriate to these principles and their application. This is the principle that remained same. Again, looking at this chapter 2, you have the same thing, which is training. So again, when you implement all of these things regarding the HACCP, you need to perform some training of your employees. We already said in chapter 1 that you have some obligation in your training program to implement 5 minimal topics to perform the trainings, and in chapter 2 you have additional topics to train your employees, especially the topics that are covering the tasks of the operation personnel in charge to each critical control point. So this means that training programs should be designed to address the concepts at a level appropriate for the knowledge and skill level of the personnel being trained. Training programs should be reviewed periodically and updated if necessary, and retraining may be needed as part of corrective actions for some deviations. Of course, for developing of the training, you need some cooperation between food business operators, between trade groups, consumer organizations, competent authorities, etc. Yeah, and these are the main changes regarding the HACCP 2020. And with this, actually, we came to the end of the HACCP 2020. I would like to use this part just to call you for one extra training that we are preparing for you, already prepared, and it will be performed on the 1st March, and we are going to talk about practical food defense, TACCP, and food fraud, VACCP training. So this is 4-hour online training of the IFSQN. These are the paid webinars, and in this 4 hour we are going to talk about these very, very important topics that and also we're going to talk about these topics from the point of view of different standards like IFS, like FSSC, like SQF, and we are going to show the thing that is needed for you, and we're going to show how you can implement these things through some tools. We will show you some case studies, etc. So if you are interested, please, you can write directly to me or go to the IFSQN and really check this training. Yeah, thank you for listening, and we're here open to hear your questions.
Yeah, thanks, Vlad. I've just to say I've put the link in the sidebar for the training that's coming up. So yeah, just bookmark that and have a look afterwards if you're interested. So a lot of questions, as you can imagine. So we'll get straight to it. I'll read them out. From Marie, was the annex seen as the best practice and or optional versus now? Please clarify further the change to chapter 2 in Codex.
Yeah, it was how you say it, optional. This is why they change it and put it that it is the chapter 2. It's not optional. You need to do it. It's now the part of almost all food legislation that you need to implement the HACCP. That's why they said chapter 1, good hygienic practices, and focus on prerequisite programs. And after you implement all of these things, then you have a chapter 2. This is HACCP, and you need to do it.
Okay, question from Do Guy. Which management exactly is site management, or is there any obligation at corporate level?
Yes, when they say management, it's top management. So it should be supported by the CEO. It should be supported by your top management, your food safety culture, not just the HACCP, but overall food safety culture.
Okay, question from BG Ravikumar. Deadline for the implementation?
No deadline. There is no deadline because HACCP is not the certification standard. It's the system. So you should start already by using it.
Okay. Where are we? Question from Francis. Does this revision encourage the consideration of physical contaminants as part of the hazard analysis? Early version placed high regard for micro hazards in preference to physical.
Yes, Francis. Yes, completely right. So previous version was more focused on microbiology, and we always thought when we talked about contaminants, when we talked about hazards, we always mentioned microbiology, and then we started talking about, okay, there are also physical hazards that we forgot about. We set up CCPs for control of the microbiology, because of the control of microbiology, some parameters for temperature, for pasteurization, etc. And during the whole thing, we forgot about physical hazards. Then we started about talking about physical hazards. Okay, implemented control of this, and then we implemented additionally, now in this version, allergens and chemicals, more detailed. So you are right. Yes, early version was placed high regarded for microbiological, but now also physical are on the same level, chemical same level, also allergens, and also radiological hazards. It's not clearly mentioned there, but all the certification schemes are saying please do that also as a potential contaminant.
Okay, question from Maria. If the intent and vision of HACCP 2020 is to remove global trade barriers, how is this going to normalize allergens in general, where allergens are defined by each independent country?
Well, Mary, they already started actually to normalize the allergen list. But if you why this allergen list is different. We have one also 4-hour training about allergen management where we talk a lot about this, because when you look at the world map, the allergens and the people reaction to allergens is different. For example, in European country, you don't have so many allergens connected with the peanut, but if you go to America, you have lots of allergens connected with the peanut, and this is very important allergen there. For example, we had here allergen like sesame, and this is now incorporated under allergens also in America. So there are changes regarding this. But no matter how you look at it, you need to label it. You need to put it on the labeling of the country where you are exporting your product. And if you are exporting from Europe to America, I think that they wouldn't say like, if you put all the allergens according to our legislation in America, they wouldn't say like, you get it wrong. It's not. I think it's not a big problem.
Okay. Another question from Ravi Kumar. Is radioactive substance in water and raw material considered for hazard analysis?
Yes, you should consider it.
Okay. Either what was updated first, BRC 9 or HACCP 2020?
I think that it was BRC. They are going very fast. BRC, IFS, also FSSC updated before HACCP.
Okay. Question from Venu Gopal. Is the dimensions of physical object between 7 mil and 25 mil only are hazards are out of these limits? It's not a hazard. Is this still valid?
Well, it's valid maybe in America. In Europe, it's not valid even this 7 millimeters. Everything is a physical hazard. Why? Because this 7 millimeters is based on the different aspects. It is looked like, for example, the size is big and you can see it by your eye if something happens, and it can get in your throat and choke you. But if you look that you have a hazard of 3 millimeters and it's sharp or pointy, and you swallow it, so you don't get choked, but you swallow it and it goes into your bowels, you get some poisoning inside your belly and you die. So I wouldn't take this consideration like 7 millimeters, 25 millimeters.
Okay. Yes, the webinar is being recorded and you'll get the slides and the recording afterwards. Maria, 7.2.5 is now huge. That could be almost anything. That is too broad, I think.
Yeah. Yes, it's huge. It's huge, but it could be almost anything. That's why they just put it the groups for you to understand what you should analyze in your hazard analysis. In your hazard analysis, you should show that we implemented such preventive measures to not have these hazards,
Okay,
so yeah, just showing you what could be there.
Okay, Miriam, did the metal or X-ray detectors become an obligation, or may we use other means like sieves, etc.?
Miriam, it's not obligation. It's just mentioned by the HACCP 2020 as some potential things to use as monitoring systems. You can still use your sieves, you can still use magnets, and etc.
Question from Dugu again. Is it possible to cover HACCP plan by FMEA? In FMEA?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. I highly recommend it.
Yeah. You actually, which training course do you cover that in?
We cover it. I think there is a training course that we talk about it, FMEA, like some tools or something like that. I cannot remember. We have so many topics. Root cause analysis. Yes, yes. Yeah.
Question from FVFV Valerio. What kind of link between operational prerequisite programs and CA?
I don't think I understand the questions.
No. CA is normally corrective action. But, Norani, how does validation on strainer, sifter, sieve used in powder-based product carried out? Not sure that's relevant.
Well, you mean the validation of sieves? Probably you mean on
Yes.
sieves.
Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, what you will do, you will take some sieves. Let's say that your sieves are 0.5 millimeters, and you implement them, and you put your products, through these sieves. And what you should do, you should take some particles that are already measured and confirmed that are 0.6 or 0.7 millimeters, and you just try to push it down the sieve. If they don't get pass, then you should say it's validated. But you
Okay.
should have like that they are measured with a tool that is calibrated, and that you are sure that this is 0.6 or 0.7.
Okay.
This could be one example.
Sorry, Vlad. Question from Sherdine. What changes are required in HACCP plan based on the new changes?
Actually, none. There are. So you should have in your hazard analysis implemented the analysis of potential contaminant or cross-contamination of the allergens. If you didn't implement it, you should. Also, you should do the validation of your overall HCCP plan. And these are the main changes for this chapter 2.
Okay, question from Fortune. What if the HACCP plan has been in existence for over 10 years? How does one perform the validation thereof?
Yes, you can perform the validation whenever you want. You should verify your HCCP every year. Now let's restart the thing. Let's say in the March of 2022, I want again to validate all of my control measures, and again I will validate all of my HCCP plan. And this will be just because it's been 10 years there. Let's see, is there something really changed?
Okay. A question from Sarah. If you are GFSI certified, does the Codex serve as a standard or best practice? Would it be beneficial to use Codex principles first and then apply certification scheme?
Sarah, if you are GFSI certified, according to some certification scheme, then Codex actually is the part of your certification scheme. HCCP is already the part. But if you think what it would be beneficial, yes, I can agree with you. If you are first time implementing in your company, it would be, let's first implement the Codex principles and then apply additional requirements from the certification scheme. This would be easier. When I do some kind of mentoring to the companies, I always tell them to first start with the prerequisites, with the Codex principles, with the HCCP, and then we add additional things.
Okay. Sorry. What do you think of the disappearance of the HACCP decision tree?
Oh yeah, what I think of the disappearance. Yes, Anne, I agree with you. We didn't mention it here because, but it was removed from the document, the HCCP decision tree, but they still say that you can use it. So nobody forbids you to use the decision tree. It is removed from the document. I don't know what was the reason to remove the decision tree. Probably it was because people were more based on using the decision tree than the evaluation through some logical systems in hazard analysis. They would just do very simple hazard analysis, yes, no, for example, and no any calculation, no FMEA, and then they would just say, let's do the decision tree to see is it or is it not.
Okay. Question from Esther. Most of the validation studies are already done for almost all food technologies or control measures, but is there any protocol or guide to validate a control measure?
Yes, Esther. I already told you there is also in Codex Alimentarius the code for how to perform the validation of your control measures. And I agree with you that there are validation studies, for food technologies or control measures. But for example, let's say it like this: we have the tunnel pasteurizator, tunnel pasteur, and we are producing, I don't know, maybe juices in cans, for example. And we already know the technology, we already have some validation studies, and we can say, yes, we trust in these studies, But what if your product is very specific for the market and you need some different temperatures there? How you will validate that your process with your tunnel pasteur in your company with your ingredients is really validated? So you will need to input some, microorganisms packed inside, really go through the tunnel and check, are they killed?
Yeah. Okay. Can you please give an example of how HACCP manual studies are required for 5-star restaurants involved in a number of cuisines? Are you familiar with 5-star restaurants, Vlad?
It depends what are you producing. Yeah, because in 5-star restaurants, you can have a different type of products there, catering products. You can have like salads, you can have like ice creams, you can have cakes, you can have, I don't know, some ready meals, soups, etc. And you can develop the flow diagrams and hazard analysis for each of these groups. From this part, you will get the critical control points, and some monitoring measures, and you can put everything in one HACCP plan. You can call it HACCP plan. You put everything in one. You just explain it in one HACCP plan, but it is very complicated. This is why mainly for if you have all the groups of the products, at least 3 to 5 HACCP studies are there for each separate group of products.
Okay. Can you quote a few examples of validation of a HACCP plan and validated critical limits? Have you got maybe just one?
Yes, I already told you about the validation of sieves. I already told you about the validation of the pasteurization. So regarding the validation, for example, of metal detector, you can take some piece of metal that you have it inside your facility, to really check does metal detector detects the metal that you have in your company. And mainly the validation would be done by these dummies by external organization. Sometimes I'm doing the validation with the external organizations. And regarding the validation of HACCP plan, this is just, let's say, on-site walking where you check the production line together with your records and documents, and then you sit with your HACCP team and you check the whole HACCP plan and you just validate it. You say, is this okay or it is not?
Right, that's good. Question from is there an organization that validates an organization's HACCP plan, not a certificate body, some independent specialized HACCP organization?
IFSQN will do it for you.
Yeah, Vladimir will do it for you.
I'm not sure at the moment really that who would come and validate your HACCP plan. Yeah, I'm not sure. I know that there are external laboratories that are accredited that can validate your control measures, but the whole complete validation of HACCP, it could be probably done by the legislation inspectors, regulative inspectors. For example, when you start with the production and then you first time implement it, and then you have the inspection coming and saying, yes, this is correct or it is not, it could be validated by them, and then you are doing regular verification.
Okay, we got a lot of questions, so we're going to have to try and run through as quick as we can.
Yeah.
Is it possible to combine TACCP and VACCP in one place?
Yes. Next.
From where can we get the complete revised manual of HACCP?
From IFSQN shop section.
That's true, actually. CCP for physical hazard?
It could be a CCP for physical hazard that you set up for the size or the amount.
Yeah.
But mainly when you look at it, the CCP is just not the size or the amount, is the control measure, working or not working. If you look at the definition there, especially in the ISO 22000, they say that the critical control point is the measure or the limit should be something that you can measure. If you can answer just with yes or no, then you don't have a limit.
Okay.
Yeah, please, just one thing, Sam. I wanted to say always this. No matter if you have the CCP or CP, you should do the same thing. You should control it. You should record it. You should train your employees for the control of it. And you should, again, have the corrective actions if something happens. So it's not matter how you define it. Is it a CCP or CP?
Okay, Way, is there any changes in the CCP determination tree? Well, it's not there, is it?
No, it's removed, but you can use it. You can go to ISO 22000, use the decision tree that is there, for example, or any other decision tree. It's not a problem. It's just removed from the document.
Okay, Ahmed, is allergen considered CCP or OPRP? And if a CCP, what's the critical limit?
No, I'm not sure that you can define the limit for the allergen, because this is very this is topic for a long discussion, because I can be allergic for a peanut, let's say 0.5 ppm and someone is allergic on 1 ppm. It's different, so you cannot define the limit for it. In case that you have non-gluten production, for example, and you say that your products are certified as non-gluten or gluten-free, then you would say that you implemented all the measures to not have gluten in the production. And the second is that you have some type of ATP swabs or some kind of fast swabs to confirm that there is no gluten in the surrounding, in the working surfaces, etc., and you don't start the production if this is found. But I cannot say that it is CCP.
Okay, and it says you mentioned the word must. Aren't all Codex texts voluntary?
Yes, Codex text is voluntary, but when you voluntarily implement it, and if you look at the legislation that you should implement it, food safety law is saying that you need to implement the HACCP, then are you sure it is voluntary?
Okay. John, any specific guideline for clause 7.2.7?
Yes, actually, if you go to the codex, you will find there is a small marking in clause 7.2.7, and on the bottom of the document you will find the codex manual for the allergen management. You can go and read that. And also you can go and download some allergen management documents from, for example, from the IFS Food. There are also some allergen management documents, how you can implement it and what you can do.
Trace says the decision tree is being discussed at the next Codex meeting. It may be added back in the same or another format.
Yeah, okay.
Marie, does ISO 22000-2018 already incorporate HACCP 2020 or not?
Yes.
Okay. Joe Paul, how can we control mold growth? Is there any HACCP plan to control spore in the work setting aside from implementing a strict sanitation process?
Well, HACCP cannot control your molds because this is just the guideline. You should control it by cleaning, by laboratory testing, by ventilation, etc., etc.
Okay. Is metal detector really a CCP or only a step?
I would say that it is a step, because you have a metal detector who is detecting is there or is there not. So you don't detect the size of it. You just say, I put it the minimal size there, I validated this, and then I have a metal detector, and this metal detector is just one step or one control step in the process. Who is controlling? If there is, he removes the product or stops the line, and then I remove the product. And that's it.
Okay. I think we're going to leave it there, Vlad. With 15 minutes over.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
I think, I cannot even read the questions because my chat is broken. It's not moving at all.
Is it not? Oh.
Yeah, it's not moving. I still see the answers from the question on the beginning. Have you read the document?
Oh,
Yes,
blimey.
no. I just see yes, no.
And I think also my webcam's not working right.
Well,
out of
I
sync?
see you, which is, I hope
Yeah.
that everyone else are seeing it.
Okay. Well, thanks very much, Vlad. It's great to get back into Food Safety Fridays, and we've had a good session today. As Vladimir said, we've got the training coming up with TACCP, VASCP, March the 1st, is it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And I've put your certificate in the sidebar. You can print that off and sign it, or you can put it in an image editing software and put your name on. So thanks everybody for attending today. Thanks, Vladimir. Have you
Thank you very much. You will have, of course, video recording on the IFSQN. You will have the download section where you can download the presentation of it. And yeah, that's it. Thank you very much. Enjoy the weekend and get rest and take care.
Take care. Yeah, we'll be back in a couple of weeks for another Food Safety Friday. So watch your emails. We'll be bringing you more news shortly. A nice weekend, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.